Working in professional studios, sometimes you see the most weird things. Hey my friends, I thought I'd make a special summer video on this one. In this video, I'm going to share with you some anecdotes, some stories that have happened to me throughout my professional career after working in many professional studios. I've seen some really weird things going on, and many times when I hang out with producers, engineers, and composers, we talk about all this and we really have a good time. So I thought I'd make a video like this. Let me know in the comments down below if you like these kinds of videos. Maybe I'm gonna make more if you like them. I'm going to start with the very first thing that I've seen that was really bizarre, and that was back in the days where I was working in post-production studios, where we were doing lots of sound for TV, for film, and I was doing also a lot of sound restoration. So one afternoon, I remember it clearly, we received this file that was, I think, maybe 12 hours long. So it was already pretty strange. And we got an email from the client, and basically they were asking us to restore the file, remove any noise, and make the voices in the file clearer. And back then there was no isotope RX, there was no spectral layers. It was a very manual process with some old tools. So I had to listen to this entire file and do this manually. So I started listening to it, and I realized that pretty much this client was spying on his wife. He had suspicions that she was cheating on him. And quite honestly, after listening to 12 hours of material, I realized that he was right. So yeah, I had to go through 12 hours of material. There were many things that were going on in this recording, many noises, and I can't really say what I heard on this recording without making this video demonetized. But I think you get the point, right? So that was quite interesting for me, because with no automated process and AI back then, I had to listen to 12 hours of somebody else's secret love life. I'm still remembering what I heard in this recording, and yeah, it was an interesting week, because it took me a week to go through the whole thing and make everything clear, so that, I don't know, maybe he wanted to use it in a court case? Who knows? But yeah, when you work in professional studio, sometimes you encounter things like this. The second story that I want to share with you is a really funny one, but I think it's a really common thing in the industry. So I was working in this studio. I'm not gonna name any of the studios that I'm mentioning here, but we had this client who ordered analog mastering with tape and tube processing. And I remember we did the master, we ran everything in some really tasty tube compressors, some amazing tape machines, analog equipment. It sounded amazing. So we sent the client the master, and they came back and they said, yeah, it sounds good, but I don't hear the analog.
I don't hear the analog.
So many times when you're doing mastering professionally, your job is to decode or decrypt what your client wants, judging on what they say. And I talk about all this in my mastering courses. I've done 3 mastering courses: mastering in Cubase, mastering in the box, and analog mastering, which is what we did in this case, and I explain how to deal with difficult situations like this. Nevertheless, we start redoing the master, trying to figure out what is this analog warmth that the client was looking for, because this went through a lot of analog gear. We sent the second revision, and the answer was, yeah, sounds great. I still don't hear the tubes. I still don't hear the tape. It doesn't feel like analog. So at this stage, you're trying to figure out what the client wants, right? So the owner of the studio comes to me and says, slap L2 on it and send it. And I'm talking about the Waves L2. I'm not talking about the Fab Filter L2. I'm talking about the Waves old and tired L2, which back then was a really popular limiter. Most people were using L2. There were no Fab Filter. It was a long time ago. So when he told me that, I said, we can't do that. This is supposed to be analog. Are you sure? And basically he went, just bounce it with L2, nothing else, send it. So with a heavy heart, I actually did the mastering just using L2 without any analog gear, and we sent it to the customer. What do you think happened? We receive an email a few hours later. Perfect! This sounds so warm, so analog, all the richness is there. Great job! Amazing! I love it! Can you please do this for my entire album? So basically, we run this mastering through a chain of maybe, I don't know, 30K, maybe more, worth of equipment, and then we slap L2 and this sounds like analog to you. But here's the thing, I'm not saying that the client was wrong. The thing is that some processors, some plugins even, are so iconic and we're so used to their sound that many people associate them with good quality. They associate them with analog warmth sometimes. They associate them with how their master should sound like. In my opinion, L2, I would never use it on the master bus on its own just because it eats up the transients. It colors the sound quite a bit, and for some songs it's good, for some songs it doesn't work at all. So yeah, that's a story I will never forget, and I find it really entertaining, but it really teaches us all a good lesson. Don't underestimate old plugins, I guess. The next story I want to share with you is again a story that I will never forget. This was a client that sent us a mix, and it was a really nice sounding track. So I did the mix, I sent it, super happy about it, loved it. Not even tweaks, it was done on the first revision. And then this very same client every 3 months was coming back asking for the most tiny tweak. Like, I will never forget, he was asking for the tambourine to be louder by 1 dB. Then he would ask for another revision 1 month later, can we pull down that tambourine 1 dB again? Then he would come back, can you please raise that clap for 0.5 dBs? Then 3 months later, this dragged for 3 years. I'm not even kidding. The thing is, because we always had to recall the project, we had to charge for every time we were doing a revision. Of course, if somebody comes back after 3 months, 4 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, there's no other way. It involves a lot of work. And he was paying happily for these tweaks. But at some point, I just had to do it. I went to the owner of the studio because I couldn't make these decisions. It wasn't my business. Since I went independent, I have full control about what I do. I'm so happy about this. But back then, I had to go and ask, say, listen, he's asking for revisions all the time, every 4 or 5 months. Can I really say what I believe? And basically we agreed, and I emailed and said, listen, it doesn't make a difference. We're happy to take your money, but honestly, just release the freaking song. It's no use to you or anyone having it in the drawer, changing the level of the clap by 1 dB or changing the tambourine level. The most important thing is getting your music out there. And I understand I do it myself with my music. Sometimes I will do many mix revisions. I will change my mind. I will go back and tweak things. But at the end of the day, I always set some time limits to myself. The song has to come out that date. If it's not out, it's over. I'm not even working on it anymore. And this way, I always make sure that I don't over-obsess over a track or over a mix or over a master. The important thing is that it's out and people can listen to it. The next story I want to share with you is a really funny one, but back then when I had to do it, wasn't so funny. And I call this the iPhone vocal girl. So there was that specific artist that ordered a production in the studio I used to work for, and I was doing all the productions pretty much. She sent us some reference files and she said, oh, I want my song to sound like this. Basically, when I was doing production back then, the way I would do it would be that either the client would send us like a basic demo and I would build on that, or they would send us some recorded vocals or some vocals with chord progressions, and then I would build the arrangement on top of that. I would find the chords and then play all the instruments, play all the synths, play the pianos, play the drums, play the bass, play the guitars, and then I would send the client the full production, mixed and mastered. So I listened to the tracks, and she had sent us songs from Rihanna, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga. I mean, you can tell that was a long time ago. And I was like, okay, cool. I know how to produce all those, no problem. And then I opened the files that she sent, and I kid you not, the files that she had sent were from an iPhone recording to begin with. So they were M4A files that she probably recorded using the cheap earbuds that Apple used to do back then. So the sound was terrible, but that wasn't my problem. I knew how to polish a turd. I've been doing this all my life. The problem was that her singing was so bad. And I don't mean bad in the sense that she was out of tune. It's that she was changing key every 3 seconds. So there was no way you could figure out what the melody is, what the tonal center is, what the key was, what she intended to do with this melody, and in the end, what chords I had to create underneath that, and what kind of production I needed to do on top of that. So because back then I wasn't independent and I had to do the job no matter what, I couldn't choose the clients. Now I get to choose my clients and the artists I want to work for. But back then I had to do it. I had to somehow make the client happy. So what I did is I took her vocal and I put it inside VariAudio and Cubase. That was one of the earliest versions of VariAudio, and I tried to create a melody that would somehow make sense and was in one key and not 10 keys every 5 seconds. And I created a melody that pretty much had nothing to do with her original melody, apart from the fact that I was trying to guessing what she had in her head. And then I built a whole arrangement underneath this with chord progressions that made sense for that melody, and basically I sent it to her. And the response was like, I can't believe how good it sounds, but I also can't believe how good my vocals were. I never realized that my vocals sounded so good. So she literally thought that this was what she sung. She never realized that the melody was completely changed or that had nothing to do with her original recording. I have to say though, that was really enjoyable. Now, if I had this happening to me now, I wouldn't take this job. I would just tell the person without being rude, listen, these are your problems that you have right there. Try and improve it. Maybe you can try this, you can try that, you can try a little bit of ear training. Maybe try and sing on top of a piano or something like this. I would try to help them, but this is not something that you get to do when you work in professional studios, and work has to happen. And this is one of the reasons why several years ago I decided to go completely independent and only do freelance work for professional studios. And I kept the best one for last, I think. This was kind of scary, but now that I think about it, it's so funny. So again, I was working in a studio and there was this guy that sent us a hip-hop track, and they wanted mastering. So we did the mastering, send it back. The guy responds and he was like super excited. I love it. It's so good. It's so amazing. All the good things that you could ever wish for as a mastering engineer. And 3 weeks later, the same guy sends us an email and says, I want my money back. And we were like, but you already approved the master, we sent you the finals, we sent you the full quality masters. No, you cannot have your money back. The job has been done as well. And then this guy goes completely nuts and starts threatening. And he says, I know where the studio is, I know the address.
I'm going to come and do this and that.
Super scary things, super nasty things. He had figured out where the studio address was. And in the end, I remember we had to call the police about this. So we did call the police and said, okay, we get these threats. Here are the emails, here's the whole conversations, here's the whole thing. And I have to say, for a few days we were all quite rattled in the studio because we didn't know if this guy was completely nuts and he would show up and do anything crazy, because he kept sending emails like every 2 minutes. Like we had an email from him every 2 minutes. So it was kind of scary. In the end, we told him that, listen, we reported you to the police, and then he stopped. So yeah, I'm still alive. So there you go, my friends. I hope you found this video entertaining. In the comments down below, if you have any of your stories to share, just put them down there. I'd really like to read them because these things are really enjoyable. If you like these sorts of videos, let me know in the comments down below as well. If you want to support the channel, you know what to do. Check out my courses, my Modern 80s Kit Max. Use the super thanks button, the join button, or hit a like. And maybe you want to watch any of these 2 videos. Thank you so much, my friends. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.